This beehive is about what we're capable of being, and what we're capable of being and what we need to be capable of is living at one with our environment.
This project, the Living Beehive, is an utterly unique structure. There's nothing like it in the world. It's a large living art installation. It's a traditional Zulu beehive hut made out of modern steel, high technology architecture, covered with a living ecosystem.
So there was this idea born of having a living beehive, and it had a number of different references. We were thinking of, it's evolved into this whole concept of beehive thinking, which has to do with the ingenuity and the integrity of beehives and bee behavior. But of course it has the strong cultural connotation as well of the traditional Zulu beehive hut.
So this structure is really a artistic structure. It's a conceptual structure, which I think is also a move for us who are scientists. You know, we tend to be very pragmatic, a little bit boring, you know, a little bit, it is what it is. So in this case, we decided we're going to harness the strengths of some artists because they've got spirituality and creativity.
Well, first of all, I had to, create the beehive, but then have people walking through it and enjoying the inside, which is, I think, the most important part. So what I did was opening it up to get as much light in as possible, and then give a floating effect when you walk through the garden. Now, the idea I got is from the pristine forest in Mpumalanga, in Graskop, where you go down sinkholes and you've got these pristine vertical gardens right all over you. And that's what I want to create inside here, is to have one of South Africa's all indigenous pristine vertical garden inside which you float through. And then when you go through the vertical garden, that's where water comes from, again biodiversity, and the importance of cliff plants and vertical plants in our ecosystem.
Bringing an idea like this to fruition needed a whole lot of technical issues to be sorted out, but at the same time to maintain that concept. It never starts with just a concept and remains a concept. It has to be brought to fruition by application of engineering, the application of how plants are held on, how the whole thing actually is going to work, and also that of timing. You know, timing was a major issue here.
So everything that's been done here has been an entirely new first-time experience for everybody involved, including the engineers, the architects. I think it was very much a fantasy, possibly to some extent, in the minds of the designers. So nobody really knew whether this was possible or what it would take to it.
This also created with the challenge of Leon's design. I think when that really, his three-dimensional sketch of his showed that sort of beehive installation form, we wondered how on earth you're going to do it. So what we used was the traditional African hut system, which actually used a series of orthogonal arches or right-angle arches. And if you look at the framework, there's a series of arches instead of the sort of rondavel arch type classic situation. And that lent a lot of interest to the structure. It also then created a web of structural elements where we covered with the stainless steel mesh on which the planting media could be placed on. And a few years ago you couldn't be able to do this because the geometry and intersections was virtually impossible to achieve. But now with three-dimensional CAD operations, all these members were drawn out and the intersections worked out by computer, in fact.
I'm an architect by profession, but I've always enjoyed the delivery of design. So I went and chatted, and really what we had was a very conceptual idea which had a little bit of engineering put to it, but beyond that, not a lot. So with nothing to lose, really, we just said, well, let's go for it. Because I think there was a little bit of skepticism in the community that there was no way on earth we were going to achieve this thing. So we very quickly got a foundation going and chopped trees down, and people started saying, oh, we're actually getting quite serious about this thing.
The entire thing is going to be vertically greened. The outside is going to be completely hydro-seeded, so it'll be a natural grassland felt sown with a mix of indigenous grass seeds. And this, as far as we know, is going to be the first vertical ceiling that's ever been done in South Africa. And that's going to be achieved by planting into all these horizontally attached pipes, which are going to be
vertical aspect of it, I think, it's not a new thing in the world of gardening, but it's certainly getting a more press, and it's being used in much more interesting ways in cities, especially in Europe and America. So this is a way of introducing it to the South Africans in actually quite a big way.
I'm Kipeni Ngwenya. I work for South African National Biodiversity Institute, and my main project is Zulu Botanical Knowledge Project. My role in the beehive was to come up with plants that can be medicinal plants that can be included in the beehive. And
there's a change of the focus all the time. So I think it's really the management of what's the next biggest problem coming at you. So as soon as we get this steel out the way, it's making sure it gets delivered to site, and then you're thinking ahead of how are we going to clad this thing. So we had quite a complex system initially, and then we came up with the idea of a mesh on the roof to carry everything, and then we had to acquire that mesh, and then the furnace that makes that mesh broke down, and then we had all sorts of traumas trying to get the mesh. So, but I think it's about having the will to just not give up all the time and just keep going and just keep going and just keep going, and you finally find the solutions. And again, it's with the right people. I think there were a number of challenges. One was time was obvious. I mean that, and then with the pressure of a budget, because in development there's a triangle of time, cost, and quality, and if one is more important than the others, those other two will suffer to some extent. Now, time was non-negotiable in this.
It's a very exciting time because it is showing that fruition of real team effort to get this thing done. Team effort in the context of the concept people, and there were also logistical problems in that regard, and I must say that the appointment of Derek Thomas as a project manager for this, as an architect, he's also addressed problems, found solutions, and not actually waited for everyone to come back to him. He's actually been proactive, and through him I think it's actually been possible to make it work.
I think all projects that are successful, it's really about the teams that come together. And I think we were all blessed with a really good team. We had very dedicated people.
No, I think I'm proud. There was such a lot of entities coming together, a lot of people bringing this to life.
Yeah, look, I think just being involved in an exciting project like this, with a tight deadline and the interaction of the biodiversity, plant life, and the strength of the engineering has been an incredible challenge. And I think when you see something that's coming to fruition, it's always a feedback. And I think it's a team effort. Can't keep not saying that, because it's that interaction. And when you come out of a project like this where everybody's put their effort in and it's a success, it's just great to be involved.
As of today, 14 days to go, so it's going to be a real cliffhanger and a real photo finish, I think.
You're putting on gel now?
About 20 past 6.
Lift the casualty.